Morning, everyone. Deputy Prime Minister, Minister for Finance, Strategic Planning, National Development and Statistics, Honorable Biman Prasad, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Trade, Cooperatives, Small and Medium Enterprises and Communications, Manwa Kamikamida, Minister for Employment, Productivity and Industrial Relations, Agnidev Singh, Director ILO of the Pacific Island Countries, Martin Vandara, Acting Resident Coordinator UNRC, Mr. Alpha Ba, British High Commissioner Brian Jones, Permanent Secretary of Finance Shri Gounder, PS Trade Shaheen Ali, trustees, members of the board of FSEF, executives from the private sector, ladies and gentlemen, and media. A big good morning from Suva. On behalf of everyone here, we'd like to thank you, Minister, for accepting our invitation despite your busy schedule. It gives us an opportunity to hear directly from the Minister with the budget announcement from Friday. We welcome the benefits that have been announced for the private sector. We, I think, are all in agreement that, thank you for listening to us with the 3% import duty. I think our membership from the garment industry would be particularly happy with this. The initiatives are promising steps towards fostering growth and enhancing business opportunities. From our previous breakfast events, we had raised that few of these things need to be looked at, and I thank you sincerely for listening to us. We have collaborated with government and met numerous times on discussions, and we hope that we can continue to work in this space. The allocation of 10,000 per student for TLS sponsored graduates is also a very good initiative, and we're willing to work on that with government as well. It just goes without saying that the private sector is the backbone of all economic development and are always supportive of policies that work in sustainable growth. Be amiss if I didn't talk about the wage increase. While we appreciate the intent behind the rise in minimum wage, a better staggered approach would be beneficial in the long run. The current increase, although well-intentioned, poses challenges, particularly for, again, our garment industry members and MSMEs. These sectors may face difficulties with this high costs, which could impact their operations and competitiveness. Though, despite that, I'm sure we can still work together and find an amicable solution in future. So we are committed to working together, and we look forward to this sort of support in the years to come. Without further delay, please join me in welcoming Honorable Biman Prasad.
Thank you, President, for the kind words of welcome. The Honorable Deputy Prime Minister Kamkamida, the Honorable Minister for Employment, Honorable Agnidev Singh, His Excellency British High Commissioner, my friend Brian Jones, other members of the Diplomatic Corps, senior government officials, permanent secretaries, friends. Thank you for the invitation again this morning to speak to you. As I said last year, and as I've been saying in all my interactions with the business community, that we are very happy as a government to have created an environment conducive to a very frank, open and candid feedback, suggestions, criticisms of how government does things. And as I said in my budget address, we are addressing a number of issues, not perhaps of our own making, but we also know that on some matters we are moving fast, on some we are not moving as fast as you may desire. And I want to make this commitment on behalf of the Honorable Prime Minister, honorable members of the Cabinet, and I think there is a very clear consensus in government that we need to up our game as well when it comes to implementation of policies, implementation of provisions that we have provided in the budget. We can have the best budget, we can have the best allocation, but if we do not implement with efficiency, with effectiveness, then the intent and the objectives of some of those policies and allocations may not turn out to be as good as we intend it to be. So I'm saying this because we want to, as a government, be very clear that there is some responsibility on us to deliver things. However, on the other hand, we expect all of us, particularly our business community, to understand the imperatives of what exists in the country, what we inherited as a government 18 months ago. And if I could just quickly repeat some of the things that we've been saying, and I said in the budget speech before I give you some details. We obviously inherited a debt level of about 90% of GDP. That partly as a result of COVID, partly as a result of past policies. And last year, in our first budget, as a government, we set out to put in a foundation of policies that we felt will provide a sustainable framework within which we can not only grow our economy, but also over a period of time, reduce our debt to GDP ratio, reduce our deficit. Because in any country, when you run large deficits, when you run large debts, the burden of paying that ultimately falls on the business community, on the people. And so it's in our interest, in all our interest, to address this fundamental issue. So we set out a budget last year with some hard decisions on revenue tax reform. And we are glad as a government that we did that. And we were able to bring in additional 600 million revenue and reduce the deficit to 4.8% from a double-digit deficit of the past. In fact, we will end up with a deficit of about 4% by the actual deficit by the end of this financial year. So this year, we have continued with that trajectory, but we also realize that there are strong headwinds, particularly with conditions in Australia and New Zealand. New Zealand recently was experiencing 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. Technically, it is in a recession. Australia is seeing a lot of headwinds, interest rates, etc., which can have an impact through trade and tourism flows to Fiji. So while we had projected a deficit of 3.5% in our midterm fiscal strategy, in the budget we decided to go slightly higher, because we didn't want to cut expenditure in a way that might aid to our O's in terms of economic growth. So we've revised our forecast from 3.4% down to 2.8% and raised the deficit from 3.5 projected or as part of our strategy to 4.5, still lower than the projected deficit of 4.8% compared to the last budget. We are also pleased with the revenue projection. We are going to collect about $3 billion in tax revenue by the end of this financial year, which is probably the highest ever FRCS would collect, in terms of our growth and the size of our economy. And I think what we are expecting is that we are not overtaxing the economy. Right now, it is not an overtaxed economy by any measure. So what we also decided, as I foreshadowed in the budget speech last year, that we're going to maintain consistency, certainty in terms of our tax policies. We had foreshadowed a dividend tax, which we decided against, having considered the views of the business community and various other organizations. We decided against it. We also listened to, as the President said, about the 3%. Some paid more than the others, but we have taken that away as well. And this is all designed to provide that certainty and consistency and fits in with our objective of listening and making sure that we do not burden the business community in a way that might affect productivity and their own production. So in terms of debt to GDP ratio, we're able to reduce it to 78% by the end of this financial year. We are only reducing it by a small point. We hope that by the end of next financial year, it'll be down to about 77.8% or somewhere around there, depending on how much revenue we collect, how much we spend. So we are still providing a pathway of progressively bringing down our debt to GDP ratio. And with the current trend, if we maintain that, then it'll take us about next 10 to 15 years, depending on our growth rate. If we grow at an average of somewhere between 4 to 5%, then it'll take us about 10 to 12 years to bring it down to around 50 to 60% of GDP. That's the nature of the debt burden that we have. And so our own debt strategy or debt management strategy is based on making sure that we explore a number of options, replacing a high-cost debt with more concessional financing. We're working very hard to access climate finance. There's been a lot of promise internationally by our development partners, big polluters, but unfortunately we haven't been able to access as much finance as we should as a small island state, as Pacific Island countries. And we are making this a very, very strong, or we're making a very, very strong push internationally in all the forums that countries like Fiji should be able to access grant financing rather than loan, because the appetite for borrowing, not only for Fiji but for many Pacific Island countries, is increasingly limited. So that's just the macro picture, we expect to collect about $3.9 billion in revenue, of which about 3.2 billion is expected to come from tax, and without any significant change to our revenue policies from what we had last year. Basically, none in a big way. So what we did last year, we are continuing with that. And with that, we expect to collect more than 3 billion that we are going to collect this year, to about 3.2. And the balance will come from non-tax revenue, taking it to about 3.9 billion against an expenditure of 4.5 billion. So from a macroeconomic point of view, we've got a solid, well thought out framework which should give us a more sustainable management of our finances and the appetite to do a bit more. You will notice, I don't want to repeat all the announcements that I made in the budget with respect to the allocations. As part of the formulation of the National Development Plan and what we heard from the people, the plan is ready. Will be approved by Cabinet this week, and the Honorable Prime Minister is going to launch that. And against the backdrop of the plan, which came through probably one of the most consultative approach to formulating a national development plan. And the 3-year strategy, 3-year, 5-year, 20-year plan, the 3-year strategy is premised firmly on getting back to the basics, where we want to address things like water, rural roads, agriculture infrastructure, because whether we like it or not, we need to move towards diversification. Tourism is good. It's performing more than what we expect. Despite all the expectations that it might slow down, it's showing no sign of slowing down. We don't think it's a problem of demand anymore. It's a problem of supply. And the various government agencies, very ably led by the Deputy Prime Minister, Kamida, in terms of pushing more investment projects in the area of tourism, agriculture. And while we projected a growth rate of 2.8% as opposed to the original 3.4%, we actually think that we will do better if some of those projects that are not only in the pipeline, I think they're already on the ground, many of them. And we expect a better growth, which could also push for better revenue for government. So in terms of the development plan, so the first 3 years is going to focus on the basics, and the basics also include improving the ease of doing business, addressing some of the fundamental bottlenecks, whether it's immigration, and the Deputy Prime Minister, Kamida, will tell you the amount of work push that has already gone in there. We haven't quite got there to get everything streamlined, but I can tell you with all honesty and sincerity, we as a government recognize that. And it's my hope, and I'm actually very confident, that some of those bottlenecks that the businesses have raised with us will be a thing of the past very soon. We also want to make sure that we continue to invest in the infrastructure, whether it's water. We're continuing with some of the reforms, as I outlined, not only of the civil service, but reforms of the public enterprises, and those that are responsible for providing utilities, whether it's to do with electricity, water, sewerage, roads. These are essential infrastructure not just from the point of view of social infrastructure, but also for businesses. And so we have provided appropriate allocation within the budget to ensure that. And I can see the chairman of the Fiji Roads Authority, and we expect them to work harder to improve some of those concerns that people have. As part of our social strategy, if you look at the investments in health, education, again, we are focusing on that because we want to ensure that we don't only provide confidence to the private sector, the business community, but people must also have confidence. And part of some of the decisions or policies that we made, including the minimum wages, is part of building that confidence as well. The health sector has been a sore point for us. Years of neglect. You can't move away from that. We are now fixing it. If you look at what happened in the last 18 months around the country, not just fixing health centers, putting in appropriate medical consumables, basic things that needed us to spend a lot more money, and we increased the budget for health in a big way. On skills development, we know that this is a very critical point for our businesses. And we hear stories every day, the backlog that used to sit there. Some have been cleared, some are still being done. And as I said before, there is a task force, there is a reset group led by the Deputy Prime Minister, Kamkamida. We are making sure that while we address the immigration issues, the ease of getting labor from outside, we are also investing a lot more in training our people here. And in the last 18 months, we've been actually quite successful. Not only providing additional scholarships, merit-based, identifying different technical areas, but we're also providing funding to smaller, new players in the country. The Pacific Polytech, despite some of the criticisms from critics, has done a fantastic job, trained almost 1,000 people, 1,000 students already. And many of them have found jobs in the hotel sector as well as the construction sector. And so there is a very clear effort by the government to build a skill set apart from facilitating the import of labor into the country. And we are also saying that given the, what I call depopulation, our population is not growing. We're actually losing very soon. We may actually have a net decline in the population. And so as a country, if we have ambitions of becoming a upper middle income or a rich country, we have to now start thinking how we can look at our whole immigration program, including skilled migration, including identifying skills that we can get and provide the environment in this country for people to come, live, work, and settle here and become citizens of this country. For the diaspora, we changed the regulations last year. We are saying to them, their children, their grandchildren, if you want to come back to Fiji, you don't have to get a Fiji passport. You come, you can live, reside, work without going through the usual 3 months permit. And it's easy. Those who are registered in the Bolari Kaumbula and those who can prove, others who can prove that at the time of independence, their grandparents or great-grandparents or their parents were citizens of Fiji. they can come back. Because there's a lot of interest in the diaspora to come back and invest. And I know DPM Kamkamida led a very successful delegation to North America, where there was a lot of interest from the diaspora to come back to invest. And on the health, let me just say that it's still a big issue. We've got the Indian government to build a super specialty 100-bed hospital. A lot of work has already gone in, and we expect the construction to start as soon as possible. We're also thankful to the Australian government for providing additional funding for a master plan of the CWM hospital, and in the interim, improvements there. But in the long term, we're trying to get support from our development partners, led by Australia, to build a major national hospital, a referral hospital, because unless we have a good medical facility, hospitals, we cannot promote other industries, whether it's retirement homes. And Fiji is a great country. We have this huge potential for investment in that sector. Apart from this, we've corrected some of the injustices of the past. We resolved the Batukola strike issue. We provided relief to the pensioners of FNPF, who were hard done in 2011 by the then military government. And so this is all designed to move on and build confidence in the country. One final point before I stop here, and I think we will need you to talk a lot more than me. And that is to say that as a government, we are very pleased with the political environment. You can have your views about how the government has done in the last 18 months. That's fine. We may not agree with some of the things, or we may not agree with anything. But one thing we have to accept and perhaps agree, that we now have an environment, the political, the economic environment, which is free, which is open, which is transparent. And I think it's good for the economy. It's good for confidence building. It's good for the country in the future. And if you look at the budget, some of the things that we are saying, all our colleagues in cabinet are saying, it is designed to take the country forward in a collective manner. On tax policies, I've always said you can never have a good tax. There are principles of good taxation that you have to adhere to, making it administratively simple, flexible, efficient, etc., etc. But there's always gainers and losers when you adopt a tax system. The gainers will be happy, they'll be quiet. Those who might lose out may not be very happy. But as a government, we have to balance this, and that's what we've done. And it's actually, the reforms we did last year are working well. And it is going to set a foundation for a sustainable macroeconomic policy, support growth in a sustainable way, and build confidence in our economy. So once again, I want to thank CEO Jonathani. Thank you very much, President. And all you members. As I said, I feel very good talking to all of you, because I know that you can be candid, you can be honest, you can be open about what you feel the government should or should not do in terms of policies. And that's the beauty of having these forums. So thank you, and I look forward to working with all of you. Naka.
Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Biman Prasad, thank you very much for your overview this morning on the macroeconomics of the budget presentation. And we appreciate listening to the private sector. Thank you. And we acknowledge government's commitment to reduction of debt, investments, especially in reforms, infrastructure, and also training and skills development. So on that note, we have a couple of roving mics. I will open it up, if you don't mind, sir, for a few questions. We have time for a few questions this morning. So if you could just raise your hand, we'll ask those who bring the mics around to ask questions. Thank you. The floor is now open for questions.
You can also ask Deputy Prime Minister Kamkamida as well.
Oh, yes. Yep. Mike, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Minister. One of the big issues for exporters in this country is the delay in getting VAT returns, particularly bigger exporters who have a lot of money outlaid in paying VAT for importing raw material. At the moment, our VAT returns are quite delayed, and we'd like to think that that particular process from FIRCA could be improved for cash flow for exporters. Thank you.
Thank you for raising that. There's a big team from FRCS with the CEO there, and I'm pretty sure that they are making notes and listening to what you've said. I think that can be improved. Should not be an issue, CEO. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for that question or comment. Any other questions, please? Your name and please.
Thank you, DPM, for an excellent budget. I will label it as a workers' budget. Having said that, I want to raise an issue. Businesses do make substantial contributions to non-profit organizations. And at the moment, it seems, or it appears to me, that the government policy is to pin down these non-profit organizations. It is intending to expand the scope of taxing them from business income to now property income, sorry. And that is really disheartening for non-profit organizations. And as businesses, we make contributions to these organizations who are, to an extent, contributing to the social obligations of the government. It's quite interesting to note that even sporting organizations do fall into that as well. It's going to extremes where government has given 13-year tax concessions to professional sporting bodies, while the organizations that are developing and controlling amateur sports are suffering and going to suffer as a consequence of the government policy to tax non-profit organizations. Would you like to throw some light into that, sir?
So two things. Thank you for that. That's already been raised with me as well the last 2 days. So the first thing is there are a lot of tax incentives for contributions by businesses and individuals to non-profit organizations. So that's the first thing. The second, of course, is the intention is not to tax the non-profit organizations. I think the intention of the announcement that we made was to close some of the loopholes and the leakages that some non-profit organizations or deemed to be non-profit organizations have used to raise income, and it is not always easy in my discussion with FRCS to actually separate what is for non-profit and what is for business. So if somebody is running a series of flats, as opposed to those who are in commercial business themselves, how do you separate that? And I think FRC's explanation in that area made sense. But as I said, I mean, we are open to discussing that further. And if we feel that that it's actually inhibiting non-profit organizations to expend their support using that, and that's something that FRCS can look at. CEO, on a case-by-case basis? Yeah, okay.
Thank you. We'll have a question from the back there then.
Thank you. I'm Rahul. Honorable Professor Biman Prasad. Thank you for delivering an exciting budget in terms of the next 5 to 10 years from a strategic development framework point of view. My question is particularly to FRCS on the fringe benefit tax that we have seen in this upcoming new budget. Now, on one end, while we see that immigration is kind of killing Fiji in terms of greener pastures and our skilled laborers going abroad, on this fringe benefit tax, which is one of the levers used by most companies in Fiji to retain their staff, is sort of, in this new budget, kind of difficult to maneuver from. So what we were paying previously per quota, per year, would be around $1,000 on a, say, REV4 vehicle costing 80 to 100K. Now with this new policy that has been put up, it's roughly around 16,000, so 16x of the price that you would be paying today. On the same note, what I would like to understand from FRCS is, say a company purchase a vehicle for 80 to 100K for the next 5 years, would be depreciating over $20,000. With this new added cost, it's 16,000 per year added back onto that company for a particular vehicle that you would purchase. And on the same note, while we are trying to move the company into much more exciting cars and bringing into electric vehicles, the tax depreciation charge on electric vehicles is actually 100% that you can take out from the first year. But the fringe benefit on that electric vehicles is much, much more higher than a normal standard vehicle. So we'd just like to understand from a FBT point of view, why it's so high in terms of the taxation levers this time around.
Sorry, I didn't quite get the gist of, I don't know, it's a mic. Did you hear? Okay, it's on the fringe benefit that you're talking about.
Yep.
Okay. CEO, you want to add something to that? Maybe I should ask Lisa to explain that.
So the fringe benefit tax, as we understand it, has not been reviewed since 2012. So there's been some time since this levy was looked at. You know, I'm not sure that it's that high, but certainly, you know, it's an attempt to actually look at that in terms of time and perspective, in terms of an approach, Minister.
Thank you, CEO. Yes, Mr. Kadu.
Morning, Jerome Cardo, PwC. Thank you, Minister, and of course your team for the great budget presentation. I think it covers a lot of areas very positively in terms of infrastructure and intention in terms of investment, etc. Plus, of course, boosting the more unfortunate in society. Just a couple of issues. Of course, on the issue raised by Madhu there for non-charitables, I don't think you can leave it to the tax office with respect to then decide, because just wearing my hat from advising different religious bodies and sporting hat as a Vice President of Fastenok as well, it is a concern because like Madhu was saying, you're giving tax-free to the big commercial sporting entities, but those trying to make headway themselves and with no leakages, everything goes back to the charity. Red Cross, for example, has a building. It rents it now. Under this change, it will be subject to taxes. Under the old Income Tax Act, it wasn't. Under the Tax Act from 2016, the policy wasn't that clear. This one appears to impose it. But from your opening comments, it looks like your intention is not really to tax it. And if that's the case, then I think that needs to be clearly stated in the law so that we can have that and other good intended business people who put money into charitable trusts rather than keeping it in their business, actually growing the charitable space. So you'll get 100% of that investment back to help the more unfortunate in society. So if, I mean, I'd suggest, you know, from your comment, it appears that's the intention, and if that's the case, if we can ask that that actually be included. First point. The second point, on the point raised by my good friend here, appreciate you need an increase, probably in the adjustment of fringe benefits tax, but that's gone from about $1,000 per quarter to 4,000 or 4,000 plus. First point on that. The second point, if we are looking to be more environmentally friendly and you're reducing the top level for your vehicles at 60-odd thousand rather than 100,000 for a diesel four-wheel drive, then that doesn't seem logical as well. So might want to look at the nitty-gritty in the detail there. One of the other issues, well, there's a few others, but I should probably bring it up separately with you and give someone else a chance. Thanks.
We can have coffee or have more discussion on it.
Jerome.
A fair point, and we will look at that.
Thank you. We have one in the
Hi.
back. Thank you.
My question is related to, there have been two tax policies which benefit Ethiopia people, which is interest-free debt and the tax-free region. What was the reason for excluding all others?
This is the existing businesses, indigenous businesses, who would now be able to get a tax-free status in that region, as opposed to previously where they wouldn't. And it is purely designed to support those indigenous business entities to do better. So it's a very conscious policy decision to support indigenous businesses. You know, there are not too many in that space. And so, yes, I mean, you can ask that question, why not the others? But as I said, you know, this is really deliberate, conscious policy decision to support those small number who we want to see grow. It's not discrimination from that point of view that that you might see it that way. It's not.
Thank you. We have a question in the front here. Mr. Rokoseru.
Yeah, DPM Prasad, and first of all, thank you very much for the incentive for the Pacific Coral Business Park. Really appreciate that, and of course, Deputy PM Manoa, and the project will start at the fourth quarter of this year. We're serious, it's there, so thank you for that. My question is around this Global Climate Fund. Last week, I caught up a couple of times with Ambassador Iovoli, tried to understand what's happening in the space. I understand there's quite a lot of fund available, and already a number of Pacific Island countries have accessed it. I think our issue is to make sure that we've got a number of accredited agencies that will enable to take projects to the fund. And we were talking to him about another 2 agencies. I think right now it's only FDB, but up to a maximum of $10 million. We've only had 1 project. So my question is, can we get the Ministry of Finance to be one of the accredited agencies? I spoke to him about the possibility of bringing some of the renewable projects that we are developing to come through that channel, so that we can access those funds and be able to get both grant and soft loans to develop some of these, a couple of large renewable projects, which is basically hydro, that will cost a lot of money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you raised a very important issue that I made reference to when I was speaking earlier. The whole issue of climate finance, you know, globally is not a tricky one, but you know, it's something that has bothered many small island developing states. The commitment that was made globally with respect to the amount is still not met. We are now talking about the loss and damage fund. COP29 is going to be a climate finance COP, and we intend to take a very, very aggressive, you know, considered approach in making sure that we are able to access this fund. One of the problems that we've had in the past, despite all the talk about, you know, how and when we can get this, the ability of us as a country to put up, you know, good proposals was not there. So the National Planning Office was basically not there. So when we came into government, we've set up a National Planning Office. There is now better coordination between the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment. The new PS is very aggressive about, you know, getting climate finance. And I think your suggestion that we need to PS, I think the Ministry of Finance, if I understand correctly, is in the process of getting itself accredited as an agency. But I think even without that, if as a country we are able to put up proposals, and we are pushing this very hard within the ADB, the World Bank, and we're not mincing our words, you know, when we talk to them about the inability of us as a country to just rely on even soft loans. Is still a borrowing, still a loan. So we are hoping that there will be a lot of grant financing, particularly for climate resilient infrastructure and for mitigation purposes such as renewable energy, etc. So, and we would also like to work with agencies such as EFL, because in the area of mitigation, renewable energy, there is a lot of potential, a lot of financing can be made available. So I think there is a lot of potential. If we do it right, if we get our act together, we can access a lot of grant financing, especially for infrastructure. Because anything we build now in this country, I mean, if you look at the extremity of weather patterns, the frequency, temperatures are rising. The heat is much more than what it was 20 years ago. It's affecting agriculture, affecting infrastructure, housing, everything. And so I think there is a big case for countries like Fiji and those in the Pacific to access grant financing, and we are working on that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have a question in the back. Yes, Mr. Rambajkar.
Thank you very much, DPM. I was very excited when you mentioned the National Development Plan that's going to be launched very soon. There was one, I think 5-year, 10-year and 20-year launched by the previous government, and we don't quite know the progress made against the same. A National Development Plan actually helps the private sector align with the national objectives. And therefore, once that's articulated and laid out, it helps the private sector to look at businesses that fall or align with the National Development Plan. What is this government's plan differently to A, monitor and evaluate the progress against the National Development Plan, and importantly, B, what sort of a report card are you looking at to report back to the public about how we are progressing against these plans? Thank you.
Thank you, Ram. Very important question and a good one. So first, just in reference to the previous development plan, that plan was launched somewhere in Germany. I don't know why. There was no real consultation. This plan that we have formulated with the help of experts from the World Bank, our own experts, we've had a thorough consultation right from the private sector to NGOs to the communities, and what we've done is to align the whole plan in terms of what the government intends to do over the next, and when we say that the government intends to do in the next 10 years or 15 years, we are assuming that future governments, unlike before, we in government are very clear about the fact that those in the opposition benches could be sitting in our benches in the future. And so we are trying to build consensus right across the board. And that's what we've done for this plan. And you're right, we've got a monitoring and evaluation unit within the Strategic Planning Office. Used to work very well before when we used to have 5-year development plans from the 70s and 80s. If you look at all the infrastructure, the big infrastructure that we have in this country today was built in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. And if you look at what happened in the last 15, 20 years, with the exception of 1 or 2, we haven't had that kind of big infrastructure improvement. And part of the problem that we have today, in terms of water, in terms of road, hospitals, schools, we've got the Australian government, for example, now to look at a major project to address the fundamental issue of staff-student ratio. In the last 20 years, Suva Nosori area has grown. Schools are overflowing with students. 50 to 60 students in primary school in one classroom. And all the teachers are, if you talk to them, they'll tell you that they end up supervising the kids instead of teaching. So we've got a major project now planned to audit all the schools, to build additional classrooms. And the plan identifies all these different areas, and that is why we divided it into 3-year, 5-year, and 20-year, because for the 3-year we are saying get back to the basics, address some of the fundamentals that needs to be done immediately and urgently, and we're doing that in health, in education, in rural areas, agriculture, infrastructure. We found out that in the last 20 years, pipe water system in the rural areas, the new ones, virtually none. So instead of waiting for the next 5 years or 10 years to take the pipe water system, we want to address these rural communities. So we've decided that we're going to build 1,700 boreholes in the country, 1,000 in Vitilevu, 500 in Vanuatu, and 200 in the Maritime Islands, to take water to the communities, clean, access to clean drinking water. So that's part of the 3-year plan. And you're right, we have a very clear target against some of those objectives, issues in the plan, and we're trying to align it with the budget. We're trying to align it with the different ministries' strategic plans. But I agree with you. I mean, you can have the best plan in the world, but if you're not implementing it, if you're not targeting it, if you're not evaluating it, monitoring it, you're not going to get things done. So thank you, very important point.
Thank you for that. We have Mark in the front here.
Well, Minister, you are a man of your word. You have saved my backside. Thank you. About the backside, the 3% duty, which I understand is now gone on the 1st of August, there is a backlog for exporters, as you understand that there is a refund of that 3% as you export it. Can I have your assurance that that 3% will be refunded continuously until it's fully gone? I appreciate we pay it up front, we pay the 3% up front. And over a period of time, as we export, we prove to customs that it is being exported, and we eventually get it drip-fed back to us. Can I have your assurance that since this program is ending on the 1st of August, that the balance that is to be refunded to the exporters will be refunded? Because it's silent. In the budget speech, it doesn't say what's going to happen to those exporters who are expecting that refund to be given back. I've got a few more questions. Can I have that answered first? I'm not going to sit down.
Well, I'm glad you agree that we've saved your backside, but we have to save the backside of the country first.
You said that last time as well. You're doing okay.
No, we're happy that we have done that, and I think I'm not too sure what you talk about the refund.
The duty drawback, Minister. Drawback. The duty drawback.
Okay, so that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
You talk about assurance again. Yes, we keep our words.
You do.
As a government.
You do. I think there was a mistake in the budget.
I'm not sure about the mistake.
No. Let me finish. Let me finish.
I don't think it was a mistake.
No, Minister. There's another item on the budget which I think is a mistake. Why would you tax EVs higher than ICE cars? Surely what you just said in the last question, a couple of questions ago, that burning of fuel is not the way forward. Burning of fossil fuel is not the way we need to go forward as a nation. We need to set the example. Why would you tax EVs higher than ICE cars. Doesn't make any sense. Would it? I see you're frowning and you're wondering why would you do that as well. So I just need an explanation, as is expressed by others, is that surely the way to go. The sun's free. The energy from the sun is free. We spend $1 billion a year on fuels in Fiji alone, bringing in fossil fuel. Surely the policy, the future policy of this nation is to see every minister driving an EV, every government car being an EV, every car in Fiji being moved towards using the sun's energy, which costs us nothing, and yet in this budget, you've taxed EVs higher than ICE cars. There's a mistake. I'm telling you, there's a mistake.
We are balancing, Mark, your novelty versus what is the reality in the country. You know, that's one variable, you know, in terms of addressing the fundamental issue of, you know, fossil fuel or renewable energy or mitigation. We in the Pacific, we don't pollute. We haven't polluted. And even if we have 100% renewable energy tomorrow throughout the Pacific, we would not be contributing, you know, anything more than 0.000 something. So mitigation is one part. There are other ways of addressing these issues. Right now, government has to balance its tax policy, its revenue policy, with the objective of mitigation. You know, we found out things like weights for trucks, for example. You allow importation of trucks to carry a certain net or gross weight. That was restricted. So instead of taking, you know, 2 or 3 tons in one go to Banua Levu, you had to take 3 trucks or 4 trucks, burning more fuel, putting up the price. So we are actually correcting some of those, you know, mistakes first before we might correct this one. But right now, we have to balance any tax, potential tax revenue with what the other objective is. Yes, I mean, tax sometimes doesn't mean that, you know, people will not go for EVs. Cars would still be cheaper, assuming that it will still be cheaper, EVs. So even with that tax, you could still expect more people to actually go for EVs. That's what we have to assess. So it's not a mistake.
Minister, the EVs, being a user of EVs, I know that the facts are that, yes, there is no duty on imported EVs currently. So yes, it comes in without paying the duty. Yeah. And certainly the issue is
you can't have your cake and eat it too.
No, I'm not saying for the benefit of Fiji, and indeed as somebody who can not burn fossil fuel, I think it's everybody in this room would be conscious of the fact that we'd rather drive a car that wouldn't be burning. Doesn't matter how little it is.
You just answered the question. It's still cheaper.
It's cheap. Sorry, there's no duty. Okay, let me rephrase that. There's no duty on imported cars, but imported EVs are expensive. They're not. You can buy an ICE car at half the price of an EV, and companies here who will buy company cars, and now that they're hit with a higher fringe benefit, will not consider buying EVs. And you're restricting the possibility of getting Fiji to becoming greener using EVs.
We can't solve that here.
Sorry, Minister?
I said we can't solve what you're saying here. We'll talk about
it later. We'll have another 12 months of discussions. And hopefully, this time next year, we can have that sorted out as well. I hope so. So, on the third question, I congratulate the government on solving 2 massive knots. The issues of the Vatakola. You did a great job on resolving that mammoth issue there. And the FMPF pensioners. I think that was a fantastic job that you've done there as well. It was a moral issue that you took it by the horns and you've dealt with it. The only question I have is that why wouldn't FMPF not be the people refunding that money or giving it back? Why is it the government of the day coming out of the national budget who's refunding it? FNPF have certainly got the revenue and the resources to compensate for that horrible situation that had happened all those years ago. So why is it coming out of the national budget?
Very good question, Mark. Out of all the questions, this was the best one. You know, in 2011, the military government was doing these changes through decrees. And when the 2013 constitution was done, a lot of the, almost all the decrees were preserved under section 173, 174 of the 2013 constitution. And subsequently, some of the decisions that were made, in fact, it says that decisions made on those laws even now cannot be challenged in the court of law. So even if we change that act, which was unilaterally converted to act, you know, the lawyers, Glynis would tell you what happened. Even if we change that, the decision that was made at that time cannot be challenged in the court. And so the FNPF, by law, cannot do that as it is. And this group of pensioners who chose or were forced to go on a reduced pension, the numbers are dwindling. There are only 1,500 of them left. Many of them, some of them have died already, some are moving on, and we had no option but to take this approach and provide some reprieve and bring a closure to that. So that was the only reason why the government took this on its own and resolved the matter.
Thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, while it's picking up momentum here, we have the room till 9 o'clock, so perhaps we have 2 more questions and then we'll wrap this up this morning. Thank you. Jerome, yes, thank you. And we'll have one more at the back.
Thank you, Jonathan. Minister, I guess congratulations again, especially around the, I think our civil servants would be happy with the pay increases. And of course, other industries with the increase in the basic wage. Of course, we'll face commercially some of the challenges around that, but in terms of moving the country forward and achieving, 5% plus growth, we need to really draw out the productivity of the civil service. We've got a lot of good people doing a lot of good work, but we're still not seeing the results fast enough. We've got so many projects on the line, and they're being held up. I don't know, maybe a hangover in culture. Can we have some comments on how you are looking to improve that in the short to medium term? Because we really need those projects moving a lot quicker and getting them online. In other words, drawing out the productivity value for money from that increase. Thank you.
I think I couldn't agree more with you on the whole issue of productivity. As a government, we ourselves are discussing this. We, right from the Honorable Prime Minister down to every minister, we recognize the fact that we cannot just continue with business as usual. We are also hoping, the permanent secretaries have their own forum, we are hoping that not only the ministers but the permanent secretaries, and I've been on record saying that the permanent secretaries need to get out of their office every now and then and see how we can accelerate, some of the processes, the approvals within appropriate policies and laws, so that we facilitate the requirements that are there for businesses, particularly approval processes and so forth. On productivity, we are hoping part of the strategy to raise the minimum wage or raise the salaries of the civil servants. Some of the union leaders are still not happy. I'm not sure why they are not happy about what we've offered. But we are hoping that, raising productivity, one of the variables in raising overall productivity is really to ensure that the employees are satisfied, they have a basic, decent wage, but also raising minimum wages and salaries, is good for the economy, good for the businesses in the long run, if that leads to increase in productivity. And we're saying to the Minister for Employment and Industrial Relations, and we're saying this to the union leaders as well, union members as well, that you cannot continue to ask for increase in wages and salaries if you don't advocate for increased productivity, good work practices, reduce absenteeism. These are some of the fundamental causes of reduced productivity at the workplace. And I think we provided the environment, the tripartite forum. There is much more freedom for the unions to engage, bargain with the employers, but they also have a responsibility to support productivity at workplaces. So as a government, we are trying to send out that message very clearly and ensure that at least our civil service is much more productive and efficient. And as I said, after years of, the size of the civil service is big. 42,000 publicly funded employees. Bill is about $1.2 billion. And as a government, we cannot have a size of civil service and not have the kind of productivity that we need. But we've also announced a review, a holistic review of the civil service structure, whether we can rationalize it in a much better way so that it supports efficiency and productivity generally.
Thank you. We'll have one in the front here from the Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Manoa Kamkamida. Can we have a mic in the front here, please? We'll take it back there as a last one. Mbaro, you can hold that mic there. We'll come back to that one as a last one. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jerome, for that question. And I think, just to support DPM Biman's answer, I think from you have to look at this from a strategic perspective as well. And right now we are developing a national digital plan for Fiji. One of the fundamental pillars for that is actually e-government, to catch up with the private sector. And once that's in place, we'll understand how much money we have to spend, and then we'll start rolling it out. Right now, to me, that's really one of the key answers to the productivity equation. The need for automation across the government process, because one, it creates transparency. You will know exactly where your application is. It creates accountability on the government official, and they can't hide around the file is missing, the file is in another department, or whatever. The two processes that are currently underway, we are about to complete the first probably initiative in terms of automation for government, which is called Starting a Business. And that hopefully will allow those who want to start businesses to actually do their requests online. One of the, I jokingly tell everyone, one of Fiji's greatest pastimes is to queue up. we queue everywhere. And this will take away queues. You can do your request online, all the agencies pick up your request, and it's processed. Hoping it's going to take, at the initial stages, 14 days. We'll try and bring it down to 7 days and keep going from there. The second one, which is the more exciting one next year, is we're having an attempt at automating the construction permit process. To me, that is about 20% of the ease of doing business issues in the country. And the philosophy works like this. You enter that information once, and the agencies process it. You won't have the stories again around, one, you normally have to do 3 copies of every single document in your development application, and then run around to all the agencies trying to ensure that they do their stuff, and then check that it's making its way through the process. The automation will eliminate all that. You'll enter it once, and you actually can see it being tracked through the process. Each agency will tell you how they're going, and hopefully that'll compress the approval times. So like, that is part of the answer to Jerome's issue around the need to create a digitized workforce within government. If that happens, it will transform the country in terms of its services across the board. So it's a long-term process. We're just starting. Hopefully the digital strategy will create clarity around what needs to be done, and then we can then prioritize how we spend money. It's going to obviously cost taxpayers money and the government, but it has to be done as an investment in our future in terms of how we're trying to transform the Fijian economy. Nak.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kamkamida. We have a last one there, and then.
Thank
Yes.
you, DP. Thank you guys for allowing me to ask, even though it's almost 9. But my question is more so around the medium-term fiscal strategy rather than the current budget. Noticed 2 items there which caught the eye. The first one was on the export income deductions and the EU blacklist, and wanted to understand what the line of thinking there is and how much do we actually gain by removing that blacklist. The second one is on non-tax revenue generation and the rationalization of the same, and what is the government thinking in terms of reducing the size of government and privatizing some of these SOEs. Thanks.
Good set of points. As I said, in terms of revenue, the reforms that we made last year is actually working. We are hoping to collect about $3 billion in tax revenue. We are hoping to collect 3.2 billion in the next financial year, in addition to the non-tax revenue. The point about SOEs, very valid. We are hoping that there will be a holistic review of some of the 100% government-owned, particularly commercial companies. So you have companies like Fiji Rice, you have National Marketing Authority, and others with different CEOs, different boards. They sometimes do things which overlap, and so there is a need to rationalize some of those, and perhaps create entities which will have economies of scale, which may be able to generate additional revenue that will take away the burden from the government, in terms of funding that. Yes, I mean, that's part of our strategy, and I think we have made some announcements in the budget as to how we're going to do that.
Minister, while we appreciate the work that's been taking place in terms of upskilling and training institutes being revived, I think in general the membership is still very much concerned about delays, if I may say, at the immigration department. We've had members call us with work permits stuck for 4 or 5 months. So can some urgency be given to that particular department in terms of assisting at least the private sector to keep going whilst we get our training going?
No, I agree with you 100%. I mean, ideally it should have been done yesterday. As the DPM Committee said, there is a reset group. I think this whole compliance mentality as opposed to facilitating things, you know, sometimes we have agencies where the compliance, you know, focus overrides facilitation. So for example, you know, if somebody gets an application, there's a checklist, they go through the checklist and reject the application, send them a letter, instead of taking the approach to say, all right, you know, you may not have this information, somebody calls and gets things sorted out and approves it. So it's a general problem. You know, for example, in the immigration department, the research group found out that there were actually 3 different checklists. So there was a checklist at the point of the application. So applicant would send all the information based on the checklist. Then there's another checklist with the person who approves it. Then he or she is looking at something else, and then goes back. So it just, so we're trying to get all that sorted out, and I'm hoping in fact, we're going to meet very soon as a group, and I was telling DPM Kamgamida that I'm also going to attend that meeting. So I can assure you that this is a problem. It's there. It was there in a big way. There's been some improvement. We provided additional funding, additional staff to the immigration department. The minister is fully committed. So as a whole of government approach, we have taken this to heart, and hopefully in the not too distant future, we will have a system which will be very, very efficient, effective. As I said before, even if we train, you know, increased number of people, I think our view is that as a country, we will have to have an immigration system. We got to look at skilled migration. We got to look at how we can assess the overall availability. We've made some improvements in the scholarship scheme. For example, we're extending the bond term. We are putting up penalties because we feel that government is spending a lot of money on scholarships, on training people, and we expect some return out of it. We're not saying that people should not leave, but if you leave, if you do not save the bond, you got to pay back, and you got to pay some penalty as well. So that's a new thing that we brought into the budget, into the TELS scheme, and hopefully that will also stabilize the gaps that we constantly get as a result of migration, as a result of lack of training. So we're looking at 3 or 4 prong approach in terms of addressing that. But I take your point, absolutely valid.
Thank you for that, Honorable Biman Prasad. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have for this morning as far as time is concerned. And on that note, I'd like to thank you all for your contribution. And I'd like now to invite our FSEF Vice President, Vera Chut, to come and move the vote of thanks.
Deputy Prime Minister, Minister for Finance, Strategic Planning, National Development and Statistics, Honorable Biman Prasad, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Trade, Cooperatives, Small and Medium Business Enterprise and Communications, Honorable Manwa Kamkamida, Minister for Employment, Productivity and Industrial Relations, Honorable Agni Deo Singh, Director of ILO, Office of the Pacific Countries, Mr. Wandera Martin, representative from the Australian High Commission, Ms. Emily Wilson, British High Commissioner, Dr. Brian Jones, other dignitaries, members of the FSEF board, executives from the private sector, ladies and gentlemen, and the media, good morning to you all. On behalf of the members of the FSEF board, the staff and the management, and everyone present here, I would like to express our sincere gratitude, sir, to our Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, Professor Biman Prasad, for accepting our invitation today. Your presence today, sir, demonstrates your commitment to FSEF and the private sector. It was an absolute privilege to hear your overview and comments on the 2024 budget. The private sector plays a crucial role in driving the economy, creating jobs and fostering innovation. And the Fiji Commerce and Employers Federation welcomes the support and the policies outlined in the budget that will empower businesses to thrive and contribute even more significantly to our nation's prosperity. We are committed to working with you and contributing to Fiji's economy. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank all the representatives here from private sector organizations. And we always appreciate your support, and we look forward to the same in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in acknowledging all of the above in the usual manner, and showing our appreciation also to Professor Prasad and Deputy Prime Minister Kamkamida and Minister Agni Deo Singh for attending today's breakfast. Vinaka. Thank you, and a blessed day to you all.
Gives everyone a chance.